Now, this is a great topic going into the end of deer season. We're almost mid-December right now. Christmas is right around the corner. Talking about deer bedding areas, creating deer bedding areas, finding deer bedding areas, scouting deer bedding areas. I want to talk about what I feel are the top 5 deer bedding areas that you can find or create on your land. And I wanted to start because there's quite a few bucks here that most of my bucks, my big bucks, I'm shooting near bedding areas or them relating to bedding areas. And so I wanted to go over a few. This is a UP of Michigan buck that he's about a 3/4 mile back from the bait piles in his bedding area wheelhouse. Shot him in the morning. And so definitely a morning buck, more of a mix of spruce, low ridges, and tag alder, and a few aspen mixed in. This is called him the 15-point buck, and he's bedded at the top of a draw with a lot of hardwood regeneration, briars, and very thick, low area. And I shot him in the evening as he was coming out of that bedding area going to a scrape. I'm not even going to say the dates here because I get them all mixed up anyways. Bedding area gun season buck. Actually sitting at the back of the bedding area, had a lot of does in front of us, and eventually he spooked in on opening day and took him an hour and a half to get to us, and was able to shoot him. Bedding area buck, opening day of gun season, sitting back. Really cool buck that I was sitting near a bedding area in the evening waiting for a deer to come out by a water hole. There were bucks fighting out in the field. He came from them. He was a 5-year-old that we'd followed for 3 years, and he was actually sneaking back to his bedding area. He was a kind of a shy buck, and I think that's why he got big and was able to get to 5 years old. And he lived about a half mile away during the hunting season. This was October 22nd during a cold front. I think he was getting off the property, and who knows, he might have stayed off the property because of other deer bucks that dominated him. But definitely related to going to his bedding area in the evening. Another great bedding area buck where he came out of his bedding area in the evening, and I call it a bedding staging area, where you're hunting a staging area. There's a lot of rubs and scrapes, but it's way back in the woods in a remote area, and it's that area where they come out of their bedding area. I think he was 150 yards away from his bedding. He slipped in about 20-25 minutes before on the last day of Wisconsin's gun season. I actually shot him with a bow when he was coming out. Definite bedding area buck right here, muzzleloader buck chasing doe out of a bedding area during muzzleloader season during that secondary rut. And bedding area buck right here, 13-point, shot him with a bow in the morning as he was chasing does out of that bedding area. He's a buck that actually charged me in the morning when I was going in. That was about 2004 at that time. This was a really unique buck that I hunted the year before this one. This one was a 10-point. This one actually fought with this one. I saw him pushing him around, and he was a basic 10. He was 4 years old when I shot him, 3 years old. This one was 6, 7. We don't know. He's an older one, where he's really old. I actually hunted the same bedding area this one was coming out of in the afternoon because I saw him going into that bedding area. And in the afternoon, he was actually going to that bedding area. So kind of the opposite of the way I planned, but still worked out in the end. Bedding area for this one right here, that was a morning bedding area where he left his bedding area, a really thick point with a lot of rocks. Went under my stand at daybreak. It was too dark. It wasn't shooting hours yet. I had to let him go. He went up. My buddy Carl, he made a big loop around the top of the hollow, and Carl got a shot at him up top. He missed him. He came down to me, and it was about 10-10, and I shot him. And he's one of my best bucks, scoring-wise, but he was at least 6, 7 years old, an older buck, beautiful buck, but going back to his bedding area. So I was hunting that. He left his bedding, he was made a big loop, and he was coming back. The Ohio public land buck right here, he was in between bedding areas. The 15-point in the corner over there, that far corner, he was a really cool buck that I was hunting right next to his bedding area. I'd seen him almost the last day of the season the year before. He was right under me, and I couldn't get a shot right under me. I had lanes going out 30-40 yards. I just couldn't get a shot. We call him the 15-point. The 15-point stand. I stuck a stand in there specifically for him by his bedding area, and lo and behold, went in there for the first sit. Might have been 2006, somewhere around there, and was able to harvest them. When I visit client properties, when I scout public land, the most sacred location that you can find in the woods or create in the woods is a bedding area. A lot of these bucks right here were shot right next to their bedding areas, what I thought were their really important remote secure bedding areas. And I believe that there's 5 things you need to look for or create on your land to have the perfect bedding area, and it reaches those bedding components that relate to almost anywhere a whitetail roams. And if you get these things to happen, you're going to find, scout, and create mature bucks. First one is hardwood regeneration. Deer have to have browse in their bedding hours, so they need woody stem regeneration, hardwood regeneration, and timber harvest activities fall within that. Hinge cut activities fall within that. Heavy mature canopy reduction, where you have poor timber species trees, you're cutting that canopy down, putting that tree on the ground, allowing sunlight to come in, and when you allow sunlight to come in, then you get that regeneration on the forest floor in the form of briars, herbaceous growth, woody stems, weeds, and then, of course, hardwood regeneration. So hardwood regeneration is so critical. And that's why out on public land, some of the best hunting you can find is you just follow the clear cuts. And if you're in really thick southern areas where the clear cuts grow back extremely fast, you can have a 4 or 5 year old clear cut that's so thick that not only can you not move through it, but a big old buck can't move through it too. And even does have a hard time sliding into there. So really look at those young clear cuts on public land, timber harvest activities on your own, hinge cut activities. If you have those 6 to 8 inch trees and less in diameter, using a hinge cut tool, and you have those tree species that are non-poplar, non-aspen, non-conifer, that typically fit within that hinge cutting range. But not every property, 25-30% need hinge cutting, but almost every property could have timber harvest, hinge cuts, or some type of canopy reduction to increase the amount of hardwood regeneration so that you can actually offer browse in a deer and especially a mature buck's bedding area. Number 2, shrubs. Shrubs are so important for bedding area. Around here, the honeysuckle shrubs not only provide food in the form of leaves and tips, but they also provide a lot of cover. In some areas, red osier dogwood, where you have lower wetland areas, I believe arguably red osier dogwood in the north half of the country, northern portions of the country, are one of the most important shrub or habitat components for deer, because it is incredible browse. It renews every year. Hard to plant. They'll grow in water, they'll live in water, but they won't establish in standing water. So they can take a lot of moisture and get their feet wet, but they won't when they're established. Also, they're very browse tolerant when older, and roots are established, not browse tolerant when they're young. So you have to cage them or hide them in some way from deer. But red osier dogwood are awesome. Autumn olive. There's a lot of back and forth about autumn olive. In Michigan, I've been to a lot of locations where if they didn't have autumn olive, they wouldn't have cover. I've seen autumn olive removal projects where they remove 10 acres of autumn olive out of a field, and 5 years later, all the hardwoods they put in there are dead and eaten down, and all that wildlife cover for pheasants, maybe grouse, rabbits is gone, nesting birds. And to me, it's almost criminal. They destroyed that. But autumn olive in some areas can be managed. And it doesn't take over hardwood plantings like people think, hardwood timber projects. In fact, when it gets shaded out, it dies. So, there's a lot of different shrubs. Red osier dogwood is a great one. Willows, where you have willow brush coming in, it's like a shrub. Great cover, not a food source. So think about that. A shrub in itself, the cover it provides, the food, is a great bedding component. And that's why it's one of my top 4, my top five favorite bedding areas that you can find deer. Now number 3. Number 3 could include switchgrass, briars, weeds, goldenrod, ragweed, whatever it might be, but it's that structure of grass and weeds that deer relate to, maybe on the edge of a hardwood stand, on the edge of timber. It's an edge habitat, early successional growth. But that's a huge bedding component, because a lot of times that mix of diversity of broadleafs and maybe some good quality grass and briar certainly provide not only cover, but food. So grasses, briars, weeds, that's that third component behind hardwood regeneration, shrubs, and then that combination of grasses, weeds, briars, and that early successional growth. Now number 4, a lot of people think about this and think, well, I got to have conifer on the property because conifer is a great winter cover. Well, a lot of times conifer and pure stands of conifer, whether it's white cedar, red cedar, white pine, spruce, whatever it might be, they're only used when deer are forced into there. Think about it. A big stand of conifer is no different than a big stand of switchgrass. There's no browse, no food. Getting back to, you have to have browse for bedding. And so pockets of conifer are outstanding. Conifer species itself provides snow hindrance cover, thermal protection, and side screening. Especially on a big scale, you can have big conifers growing on the side of a ridge, and you can't see behind the ridge all the way up the height of the the height of the conifer. So those conifers are outstanding for providing a component of bedding that deer utilize during different times of year, provide great screening, and so that extends the life of those and the use of those conifers throughout the season. The number one place that I find mature bucks, the number one way that you can find mature bucks on public land, this habitat combination that you can create on private land, is the combination of all four, meaning hardwood regeneration, shrubs, briars, grass, weeds. That's a separate, one category, and then conifers. So when you put all those four together, outstanding bedding anywhere a whitetail roams. So if you're looking for great bedding on public land, then you're going to look in clear-cut areas that are next to hardwoods, maybe a little lowland cover. You have that combination going on. If you can get 3 of those to take place out of the 4 or all 4, then number 5, that is the best bedding, is a combination of those first 4. Doesn't matter if it's public land, private land, get 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 4 of those to happen, you'll have a great location. And I'll point out 2 of these bucks, the public land bucks that are in this location. This one over here that I said I shot in the UP of Michigan, great, beautiful 8-point, mature 8-point, just beautiful. I was blessed truly to take that buck on public land. But there's leatherleaf shrub in that area, tag alder, fir, spruce, and a little bit of ash, old black ash. And then also at the same time, it had a little bit of aspen mixed in. There really wasn't much out there, but it had that combination. It had the conifer, it had the shrubs, had a little bit of hardwood regeneration. And so it had 3, and that's why I hunt in those areas on public land. When you can find that combination on public land, especially federal forest where that one was at, is usually a monoculture. My buck that I shot in Pennsylvania this year, you can see the amount of browse that was located nearby. I was in a saddle that was exposed to the south, so I had good browse there. I had good hardwood regeneration. I had a few conifers mixed in the area in the form of white pine. I had a big hemlock bench just off the backside. So I'm hunting a combination of habitat. I'm not just hunting out on a hardwood point where there's a monoculture of hardwood, and I'm not hunting down in the hemlock flat where there's just a hemlock, unless there's, again, going back to those big blizzard conditions to push the deer there. But combination of habitat, and I'm hunting a 3 by 10 mile area, and that's one of the best combinations. That's why I like to hunt in that area. Within a mile, I've shot 16 bucks at that location in Pennsylvania public land. And finally, the Ohio buck over here, public land. Between major clear cuts on a bench system that featured a lot of blowdowns on the front side of it, on the face, sort of sunlight coming in. There was an explosion of browse. We even had a good licking branch in front of us where we had a lot of bucks come into, where that tree was hanging down, the branches right down there where we could break off, put a camera on it. Featured a lot of low, young oak coming in because of the sunlight that was hitting there from the blowdowns. And then again, it was between 2 major clear-cut areas where does will hold and utilize because of the diversity of habitat, and then during the rut, those bucks are going in between. So this isn't just for private landowners. Find it on public land, find that combination of those first 4. If you can get all 4 to happen in one spot on public land, but even on public land, if you get 2 out of 4, usually you're going to find a good spot, let alone 3 or 4 out of 4. And on private land, really work hard to not just plant switchgrass, not just plant conifers, not just create hinge cuts, not just to plant shrubs, no matter how quality of a shrub they might be, like red osier dogwood. But on private land where you have that ability and control, and if you have the resources, get all 4 to happen on that small private land parcel, and watch your parcel stick out like none other in the local deer neighborhood. And guess what? When you have that bedding on your land, when you find it, then your ability not only to experience a quality herd will be met, to create a quality herd will be met, but to actually hunt a quality herd. Get those 4 to happen this year. Check out my bedding area playlist on this channel right here. And I think you'll be on the right direction, whether you're scouting or creating deer habitat this off season.